For what? The last 30, 40 years. The whole world has basically run on one big assumption. China will just keep growing, relentlessly. But what happens when the very engine of that growth, I'm talking about its massive population, starts to go into reverse? Well, that's exactly what's happening right now. It's a huge, fundamental shift, and believe me, the ripples are going to reach every single one of us.
And this quote really nails it. This isn't just some temporary blip on the radar. We're talking about a historic turning point. Seriously, for the first time in its modern history, China is looking at a future with fewer people. Not just for a year or two, but a sustained decline. To give you some scale, some projections show its population could drop by over 100 million people by 2050. 100 million. That changes literally everything. So let's just step back for a second. How did China become this economic titan in the first place? Well, for decades, it was all about a simple, powerful formula. You had this almost endless supply of young workers pouring into the cities, ready to work in factories. That fueled this incredible industrial boom. But that whole equation, it's broken. The new reality is a workforce that's shrinking and a population that's getting older, way faster than almost any other big economy on the planet. All right, so let's start with the first ripple effect. We're going to look at where these changes are hitting first, and that's right at home, inside China itself. And I want to be clear, this isn't some abstract problem for the distant future. No, these are very real tremors shaking the economy right now. Okay, so you see these pressure points, and they are all tangled together. It's pretty straightforward, right? Fewer workers means labor gets more expensive. An older workforce, well, that can slow down productivity. But the real squeeze, the big one, is social welfare. Get this. Right now in China, you've got about 5 workers supporting every one retiree. By 2050, that number is expected to drop to just 2 workers for every retiree, just 2 to 1. Can you imagine the insane strain that puts on pensions and healthcare? It's a classic demographic time bomb, and it's ticking incredibly fast. And if you want to see where this squeeze is really playing out in real time, just look at the property market. For years, real estate in China wasn't just about having a home. It was the way families built wealth. It was a huge, massive driver of the entire economy. But the whole thing was built on one simple assumption, that there would always be more people wanting to buy houses. Well, this demographic bomb blows that assumption right out of the water. It's simple math, really. You have fewer young people getting married, starting families, so you just have fewer people looking to buy their first apartment. This isn't just a normal market downturn that'll bounce back. No, this is a deep, long-term structural problem. And when you look at the trend line, it's just undeniable. The era of crazy, nonstop demand for housing in China, it's over. It's already dropping, and everything points to it going much, much lower. Honestly, this one single trend explains a huge chunk of the economic headaches we're hearing about from China today. But here's the thing. Problems this big don't just stay put. What starts as a tremor inside China is now sending out major shockwaves all around the world. So to really get the global impact, we have to remember the role China has played for decades now. It was the world's factory, right? It made everything and it made it cheap, which basically kept prices low for all of us. At the same time, its massive construction boom was like a giant vacuum, sucking in unbelievable amounts of raw materials from every corner of the globe. That whole model is now being turned on its head. First step, labor in China isn't so cheap anymore. So what do companies do? They start looking around for other options. Global manufacturing is starting to spread out, looking for new, more affordable places to set up shop. Now, this doesn't mean factories in China are shutting down overnight, but it does mean things are diversifying. We're seeing a real acceleration of production in places like Southeast Asia, India, even Mexico, as the world gets used to the idea of a more expensive China. And what this means is a totally new game for global business. Look, China is still going to be a manufacturing giant. That's not going away. But its position as the undisputed #1 default choice for making cheap stuff, that's being challenged. It's just not the automatic go-to it used to be. And this shift doesn't just affect what China sells, it affects what it buys. I mean, think about it. If you're building fewer skyscrapers and bridges, you're going to need less steel, less cement, less energy. So countries like Australia or Brazil or many nations in Africa that basically built their modern economies on shipping all these raw materials to a ravenous China, well, now they have a problem. They've got to find new customers. Okay, but China isn't just sitting back and letting this happen. Not at all. This demographic crisis is forcing their hand, and it's sparking a huge strategic pivot. Their answer to this problem? Technology.
I mean, this is the big question, right? This is the one that keeps the leaders in Beijing up at night. If you can't rely on having more and more people to grow your economy, what on earth do you do? How do you keep moving forward?
And here's their answer. The strategy is basically this. If you don't have enough workers, you build them. You replace people with machines and smart software. So you're seeing this massive government push to automate factories with robots, to dominate advanced manufacturing like electric cars, and to become an absolute powerhouse in AI. The entire goal is to make every single worker they do have way, way more productive. But this huge push into tech, it's not just about the economy. It's about power. It's about geopolitics. This whole demographic problem is fundamentally changing what China wants and how it deals with the rest of the world.
You can see a really clear shift in their strategy. The old goal was just scale. Grow as big as you can, as fast as you can, whatever it takes. But now that that kind of growth is way harder to achieve, the new priority is different. It's about being self-sufficient in key areas and dominating the high-value industries of the future, like computer chips and AI.
And that has a really critical consequence for the rest of us. See, when your economy is booming, you can afford to make a few mistakes. You have a margin for error. But when growth slows down, that margin just disappears. And that can make a country turn inward, maybe become a little more cautious or risk-averse on the world stage, because keeping things stable at home suddenly becomes priority number 1, 2, and 3.
So at the end of the day, it really all comes down to this quote. For the last 30 years, we've all learned how to operate in a global economy where the rules were pretty much written by a rising China. But a China that's smaller, older, and hyper-focused on technology, well, it's going to play by a whole new set of rules.
You know, for our entire adult lives, the world has been reacting to a rising China. Now, we all have to figure out how to adapt to a changing one. So as the old way of doing things, the one built on China's population boom, starts to fade away, the biggest question for all of us is, what are the new rules going to be?